Greetings everyone, welcome to Token Nuggets. In this session, we meet Associate Professor Richard Oloruntoba, the Supply Chain Management Lead from Curtin University, Perth, Western Australia. We talk about his recent article with a focus on cybersecurity and recent events. Richard shares nuggets of learning and information with us based on what prompted his recent article. As always, thank you for your time, and please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Enjoy. Good afternoon or greetings, everyone, from wherever you're listening to us from. This is another one of those sessions where we meet special guests in the house today with us. And as always, we're just sharing nuggets of information and stuff and learning as we go on. For today's session, we have a special guest in the house. We mentioned this in one of the previous episodes that we'll be bringing an associate professor on board to talk about cybersecurity, etc. But before we do that, we'll do our usual quick fire round and meet the guests. So, we'll go over, today is going to be one of those ones where we cross continents. So we start all the way from Germany. Introduce yourself, our guest from Germany, please.
Hi, everyone. This is Jedi K, the usual one here. Today, talking to you from Riga, and I'm known on this channel as the Dot Connector.
Oh, excellent. Oh, you're in Riga today. Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. And we swing over all the way to Africa. Nigeria. Introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. This is Eagle One from Nigeria. It's good to be here again. It is Democracy Day, and crypto still fascinates me.
Oh, excellent. Happy Democracy Day over there.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we'll swing over to the southernmost part of London, Essex. Sol, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining. It's Sol again, one of your crypto enthusiasts. I'm broadcasting live from my garage, as you can see, and is also me on this channel today. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay, and finally in London, we swing over to Chibueze.
It's interesting to be here again, and I'm glad to be joining up with our guest. I'm Chibueze. I live in Gayford in London. I'm a cybersecurity person. I'm a blockchain enthusiast as well. On this channel, I call myself a coin watcher.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Okay, then we swing over to Australia, and we'll have our special guest introduce himself. Over to you, Associate Professor Oloruntoba. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, this is Richard here from the beautiful city of Perth in Western Australia. It's nice to be here, and I'm very glad to have the privilege to mix with other techie buffs like yourself.
You mean the nerds around here? Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for honoring this invite and coming on to have a chat with us. And like I've said previously, what we try to do is just talk about most things, blockchain, cybersecurity, etc. So we stumbled across one of your articles, which is on my screen now as we speak, from theconversation.com. And the title of the article is Cyber Attacks Can Shut Down Critical Infrastructure. It's time to make cybersecurity compulsory. And, we read through that, and then we happened to just stumble across you here. Oh, wow, this is someone who's known to us. We might as well get you on the show and have a chat about this. Just a general chat about cybersecurity and the effect it's been having on critical infrastructures generally. So what the team have gone to do is have a look at the article and come up with questions, and then we'll have a good old chinwag, as they say, about stuff. So for now, before we do that, I'd like Associate Professor Oloruntoba to talk to us about this article. Perhaps what's prompted this?
This article was mainly prompted by the recent hack of Colonial Pipelines. Colonial Pipelines is the biggest distributor of energy products on the East Coast of the United States. And this hack brought down about 40% of petroleum products to the eastern board of the United States. So it had a great impact. And that was the original motivation. But before this successful hack, we've written about the need for cybersecurity compliance to be taken more seriously. And this now goes from the US context to the specific Australian context, where many cybersecurity regulations are given on an advisory basis. So companies and organizations are not actually made to comply. It's just advisory. But our argument is we need to go beyond mere advisories, but for companies in critical sectors, such as energy, such as seaports, airports, banking,
water,
transportation, yes, they need to actually be made to comply. And we know this will cost more money. It will be worth it in the end because it will prevent these types of hacks from occurring. And when this article was published, within 10 days of this article being published, we had another major hack, this time of the biggest meat processing company in the world, JDS.
Yes.
And they have a very big operation here in Australia, particularly in Northern Territories, where there are huge cattle ranches, hundreds of thousands of cattle and huge meat processing plants. Over 20,000 workers were affected. 75% of Australian beef exports were also affected while the hack lasted. So again, that underlined the significance and the timeliness of this article when it was published.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. And it caught our attention, quite rightly so too. Very timely. And what we have as a team have done as well is to pore over the article and just have a general discussion about it, because it must be said that Associate Professor Oloruntoba is a supply chain management expert and is the supply chain management lead at Curtin University in Perth. So guys, I'll throw it out to you guys. What has caught your attention in the article, or perhaps on a general level? What do you think you'd like to pore over on this article? Again, one of the things I thought was to relate it as well to the African context as well. How prepared are we out there? Cybersecurity centers of excellence and all of that. Chibueze, you want to go in on this first? Because I know you're a keen enthusiast on this.
Now you're putting me on the spot.
you could swing it over to whatever way you want to form your question. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'll first of all make a comment before I ask a question. Cybersecurity is something we talk about all the time. Both people who are in the field and those who are not in the field. Some of us we just hear about it. But it's important to begin to actually see these attacks happen in real life, see their impact on our lives and our infrastructure. Now, Prof talked about the beef, the meat company, exactly, and then there's something Prof mentioned here. So he's just talked about how these guys were able to shut down this supply chain thing. But when I was reading this morning, I also came across, of course, we are talking about infrastructure here, and we see that even in the area of IoT, for instance, so we see a lot of application of IoT in different fields. Say, talk about cattle, for instance, we can put tags on cattle and then begin to control them, to monitor them. Now, we need to also think about what can even go wrong if we begin to put chips on cattle and say, okay, we want to monitor these cattle. If you put chips on them, this is wired to a computer network. So what happens if something happens, if an attack happens on that network, and then bad guys takes over it, and then these cattle can things can happen to them and begin to
Okay, so essentially that you're talking about tracking, so technology that
about tracking technologies. Okay. Exactly. Okay. I'm also looking at that area as one place where things go wrong.
Okay. So we know that things go wrong, but one question comes to mind then.
Yeah.
So do we make it compulsory for companies, all companies that manage critical infrastructures, ports, pipelines, like the professor has alluded to? Should we mandate all of these companies to follow same kind of rules across board, at least basic rules across board. Can I throw this back to the professor, actually?
I think we just need to make a critical distinction here by first having a definition of what you refer to as a critical infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
When we use the term critical infrastructure, we mean infrastructure that the society cannot function without.
Absolutely.
For instance, hospitals, airports, control towers at airports, traffic light systems. These are all critical infrastructure, the internet, telephone systems, and so on. So if anything happens to these types of critical infrastructure, society can't function. And we don't want anything that will paralyze the normal functioning of society. Having said that, there is also another phrase which is commonly used, that is critical supply chains. Critical supply chains are different from critical infrastructure. Critical supply chains are the supply chains of key commodities that sustain us. For example, food supply chains, they are critical. Without food, we can't maintain our society, we can't maintain welfare. Critical medicines, critical supply chains for medicine. For example, a lot of people have diabetes, they need insulin. People have high blood pressure, they need high blood pressure medication on a daily basis, and many other ongoing chronic lifestyle diseases, particularly in the Western world. So these are all critical supply chains, and we don't want those to be disrupted. So in terms of critical supply chains and critical infrastructure, we were arguing, and we still do, that these big operators of these supply chains should be mandated, of course, giving government incentives, mandated to actually have like baseline security standards.
Absolutely.
They first need to map their whole supply chain, look at where the vulnerabilities are, and then plug those vulnerabilities. As I said, it will cost money, but then government might give them, incentives, tax credits, whatever, just to subsidize such an investment.
So to buttress that, so essentially a basic sort of a baseline level of security across board first.
Yes.
At least.
Yes.
Because there's the saying that goes, vulnerable but not compromised. Everything's vulnerable, as we know, with proliferation of internet and all of that. Everything's vulnerable. But being compromised is a real thing. Okay, I get that. I'll swing this open to the team, guys. You want to chime in here? Jedi K, you have anything to chime in here?
Yep. I am.
Before you chime in, please let us know your background as well to what you do, and because you deal with supply chain as well. So carry on.
Yeah. So my day job is as an infrastructure program manager for a supply chain, company. So I'm really seeing this every day. And if you all remember, then with the ransomware attacks that affected some of these logistics companies, mine wasn't affected. We got more volume, and I know how security is always crazy, even with us internally within the group, because they see it as something important that can never break down. Because one thing is, data is moving constantly, and that is what basically it's the engine that drives the machine. Absolutely. Of logistics. So we can't afford to have that compromise. That being said, so that's what I do on a regular time. But for this call, Prof, so now we're looking at it from what we call critical infrastructure, linking that to what we usually do on this channel, which is more into blockchain and the way cryptocurrencies are now being accepted or adopted as a form of legal tender. Then that would invariably make like the whole blockchain system, ecosystem, a critical infrastructure, because it is what we use to trade, and it's our legal tender. Are you also of this same opinion?
Yes, thank you for that. I think blockchain is a very important technology with relevant potential applications across various sectors. And I will think that is one reasonable way of addressing the problem, particularly when there's so much critical data, important data at stake. However, my concern at this stage is that blockchain has not been widely adopted in many areas. It's still kind of emerging in its applications, although there's been a lot of publicity about all these emerging technologies, including blockchain.
Yeah.
But in real life, their applications are not as widespread as the media has made it to be. So perhaps if we can educate the society about the value of blockchain technology and its potential use as a means to mitigate the risk of cyber hacks and ransomware attacks, then we'll make a lot of progress if we're able to do that.
Absolutely. I think to buttress your points there, I think the whole idea of a distributed ledger technology is fantastic. And then we have a situation where we can actually utilize that platform to also ensure security and transparency as well of what is going on. So I think it is important. And I also support the fact that we need to teach people, especially people like yourself in academia. The onus is on you to actually help, disambiguate those big terms and make people understand the very basics of cybersecurity as well. So yeah, I agree with that. Anybody wants to chime in on this one?
I mean, there are a few things Prof has mentioned this morning that really aroused my interest. My background, I'm into aviation. I'm a helicopter pilot. Crypto is something that fascinates me, like I said, and that's why I come to this channel as often as I can as well. So, I mean, question was the relevance of, making it compulsory for the basics to have compulsory, security for their systems so that people don't get into trouble. So yeah, it is a solid assertion, and I think it's something that comes to play a very, very big role, especially in this climate, Africa. As we all know, development in the West is way more advanced than it is over here. So Africa is kind of catching on most of the tech developments. So at least for now, we know Africa is big on internet, and the financial institutions are also big on security. Now, how good they are and how compulsory it is what I do not know. But having said all this, I think it's important. I think it's something that should be adopted here as well. But I also see opportunity here because it's an area or region that is still playing catch up. There are opportunities to have the potential for setting up things like this. Education was mentioned already, and I think we spoke about this on the channel a couple of sessions ago about people needing to get the information, needing to get educated so that they can understand what it is really all about. But being the way it is, it could be a difficult task because of here, but I mean, we can't look at the difficulty side of things, but we should also look at the opportunity side of things as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, to get Africa ready for the blockchain or cybersecurity implementation, as it should be.
Okay, excellent. Sol, any comments from you on this one, or we carry on?
I actually just wanted to add a few points to what Professor Oloruntoba mentioned. And I like your phrase as well, where you said, it's good to be vulnerable, but not compromise. I think that's the key word in there. Professor mentioned something about critical infrastructures, right? And you did point in some sector and industries where you mentioned the NHS, the National Healthcare Service that we have here. I'm lucky to be I've been sharing this with Talking Nuggets every evening when I leave the work. We just have a rant, discuss about crypto and that sort of thing. And we were making mention of the NHS's infrastructure. And they sort of use like a Windows 10. as an operating system. You know, everybody in their house, you've got the Windows 10. But the way you and I would update the security and critical updates on our machines at home is obviously sort of different to the likes of maybe the NHS that runs like almost tens of thousands of assets.
Enterprise.
So we're talking more enterprise. And I think someone did mention now that it can be a difficult task to actually initiate, and that's a fact. So point in case, NHS, bear in mind you've got NHS that has like, let's start from child's birth, okay? You've got accident, you've got emergency, you've got hematology, you've got all these wider areas. I mean, how do you implement that? How do you even start securing? So they've got Windows 10, but unfortunately, the operating system is running something called maybe 1709, which is September 2017. And for Christ's sake, we're in 2021. So it can be a difficult task, even for us just going there trying to make that possible. But I just wanted to say that the point you make that it's a difficult task is something. I mean, we use something called a patch management strategy on book. Sounds very, very good. You know, hey, patch management strategy. But come executing that strategy is always where the issue is. So I just wanted to chip in that, yes, it can be indeed a difficult task.
It really is. It really is. Thanks for that, Sol. It really is. It really can be. But again, swinging back to what the professor alluded to again, I'm keen on the fact that, you know, mandating basic levels of security. And then that also comes down to the fact that personnel training is essential as well. Understanding the fact that deploying a two-factor authentication on your emails or your applications may make that difference. So making people understand that. But if who you're trying to explain to doesn't even understand what a two-factor authentication is, therein lies the task. So swinging back to Prof, how then do organizations, how do we begin to tackle this?
Yes, you raise a very good point there. It's a very complex situation. This challenge is not just applicable to that particular sector. It's a widespread question in various other sectors.
Absolutely.
There are so many sectors that have come up with this issue. I think at a basic level, education and awareness is basic. I mean, universities have a role. Primary schools have a role.
Absolutely.
Secondary schools have a role in educating people about the need for cybersecurity and these protection. I think the key thing is to avoid the complications in terms of trying to explain the technology and how it's blockchain, for instance, but to focus on the benefits. Every technology has its technological features. What are the characteristics of the technology? What's the engineering design?
Absolutely.
And all that. And then every technology has functions. What is its purpose? What is it designed to do? What are the functions? And then what are the benefits? So there are three levels: the product feature or the technology feature, the technology function, and the technology benefits. Most lay people are interested in the benefits. Yes, they're not engineers. They are interested in the benefit of applying a particular technology to a particular problem, and that should be where the focus should lie in explaining to people these are the benefits. This is what happens if you don't do this. If you are careless with your data security, your information security, this is what might happen. These are the risks. And if you do these and you apply this technology or buy this technology or this software, these are the benefits.
Absolutely.
And this also has a sociological and a behavioral element to it. It's not just a simple matter of educating and enlightenment and information provision. It's behavioral. Human behavior prefers routine. You do what you always do. But anything that requires a change of behavior is often difficult for people. So we need more research on how to get societies to transform their behavior, to start to think differently and to change behavior of whole populations. This is it. and this is a complicated problem, not just for cybersecurity, but even for things like taking up new renewable energies that are coming up. Hydrogen, for instance. How do you convince people that hydrogen is much better than just using your normal petrol or your normal diesel that we've always used? How do you make everybody begin to use electric vehicles? So it's the same. You need a specialized
convincing campaign of some sort. Compelling.
Not just education and information, but it has to be sociological, behavioral integrated,
excellent
scientific approach to making people change behavior.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Prof. I think Chibueze has his hands raised. You want to chime in, Chibueze?
Yeah. I just want to chime in a little again. Yeah, valid points made by Prof in terms of and everyone in terms of education. But there's also this aspect of, which is actually a very interesting research area that's been well researched on about usable security. Now, one thing people in tech people and the security people try to often forget about sometimes is making things simple, like the Prof just alluded to. Usable security is, it deals with how to make sure that these products and processes are actually usable. So what's the point of, you want to tell people about the benefits, but you also want to make it presented in such a way that not just understanding it, but they're able to use it. Okay, if you go to someone and say you want to have a password of say 40 characters with all sorts of letters, symbols, and all that. That's okay. That's probably going to be easy to not easy for people to crack, but depending on the situation, you really need that. So they have to also pay attention to that aspect of usable security. That's where people are able to look at the tech, the security, and then they understand it, they know the benefits, but then make it easy, simplify it, make it easy for them to use.
Okay. So essentially that's merging both. Well, okay. I will attempt to marry both points now. So Prof alluded to making users or the regular people like myself, yourself, making us see the benefits of application of these things, or cybersecurity or whatever it be. And then you're also alluding to the fact that as tech people, we should also ensure that it is usable enough for people. So marrying both, so the benefits and usability, makes a fantastic product for people out there. I think those are well laid out.
Yes, friendly.
Yes, user friendly. Absolutely, user friendly indeed. Simple put. Right. Anybody wants to chime in again before we move on and then round off gradually?
No. It's just more. I think we're in more than less in agreement on this. So first from I'll say the general populace side, the provider of service side, and also the tech aspect. But also what I would like to still get some clarity on is even when we set this, or if it's possible to mandate this basic
requirements,
who defines it? So there's going to need to be, I think, probably think tank somewhere with maybe Prof in that to actually define the different levels required for the different aspects of critical infrastructure. And then first thing, like you said, is just to be on an advisory role. And we try to lobby and get this in, because I think it should be mandatory as a minimum.
Absolutely.
For these service providers.
Absolutely.
But then the next step, I think, will be to define even for each and every aspect what the minimum requirements are, because people evolve, so it's not just the one.
It won't be
static.
Absolutely.
Because even as much as we say blockchain is actually a good use case to ensure security and reduce vulnerability, we've also seen in this same thing that even the blockchains themselves get attacked.
Absolutely.
Right? So not to compromise the data, but to compromise the network in terms of slowing it down, because now it's not just about the gazillion bytes of data out there, it's also the transmission speed, because we want everything, instantaneously. So there's one side of it, using the blockchain as a solution, but we shouldn't sit on our hands.
Okay,
I think
excellent.
that's a good point. If I might come in,
yes, please.
It's a very, very important point. I don't know how the system is in the UK, but here in Australia, we already have a government. If you look at the latter part of that article,
Yes,
it refers to a government body, an institution.
ACSC. ACSC. Yeah.
Yes, ACSC.
Yes.
It has a lot of engineers, software developers, a lot of experts on the technology side, as well as on the policy side. And they have very robust guidelines, I must say, existing already as part of our national resilience framework. But the key thing is currently it's just advisory.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, it is targeted at organizations, not individuals. The individual end users, what they will require will be completely different from what organizations will require, like businesses, non-governmental organizations, and even government organizations. My colleague, my co-author on that article, he's done research published in other research outlets, which shows that so far many organizations and agencies just say, well, this is advisory, I don't have to do it. That's the attitude. It's just advisory. So we don't really have to do it. And that points to an assumption that if you want something done, you've got to move beyond mere advisory to actually mandating that organizations comply with it. And our Australian context is a little bit different from the UK context in the sense that increasingly our region, we have to be more careful because of all the recent cyber attacks going on all across the world. So far, we've been lucky in Australia, apart from this JBS MIT
hack.
Overall, we've been very lucky. Unlike the US, where a lot of attacks have been successful. So we want to be proactive. We will rather be proactive and be on the preparedness side rather than picking up pieces. And also, another relevant issue is that governments, particularly big, important, powerful governments like the US government, is taking up action in this regard. They got some of the money back for it. In the colonial pipeline. And also the US government is beginning to try to track crypto payments, Bitcoin payments now. They're looking at ways to actually track it.
That's a totally different discussion, but it is all interesting, and it's good to know that there was some recoveries of funds and all of that. That's a totally different angle of things. But very interesting. And thanks for that. You have your hands raised up still, Chibueze, or? Go on.
Yes, I see have it raised up. I know, Prof just mentioned that the US government wants to track that. I think I agree. That's a whole different conversation, But going back to the subject in hand, I think there's a lot of regulations already out there. So let's not ignore them. Like, Prof talked about what's happening in the UK. I know about 2 or 3 years ago, the GDPR law came into effect, that dealing with PIIs and data exfiltration and all that. I think it's you can do education, you can do have standards, but it's also important to know if it has to do with critical infrastructure, critical information, and it's also important to actually go beyond, like Prof just said, to go beyond all that and enforce it, and also provide a mechanism for for penalties to be paid if it has to do with like in the UK, for instance. I know BBC and then the airlines and even hotel chains paid a lot of money a while ago just because data was stolen.
Breached,
So, it was breached. I think it's important to also go to that length. Yes, you educate people, but you also need to be made aware of what penalties or what punishment can result from if they don't do their due diligence and then hold their themselves accountable and then do what they need to do.
Absolutely. It is interesting. We shan't let this drag on for too long. We just thought we'd keep it very simple. Didn't want us to dive in too much into different regulations or frameworks that exist. I just wanted us to keep it very simple so the regular person can understand what it is we're talking about. So thanks for that, guys. It is very interesting. So one last thing is, again, guys, do you think the Africa context, what are your thoughts? I'll pass this over to Eagle One. Again, what are your thoughts on critical infrastructure? Well, you're in aviation. I don't know, do you get training on what it means to secure even your personal data as a pilot? Do you get training from your employers?
Okay, yes. I was going to raise my hand to make some more comments on the training aspect of things. When Prof was talking about, when I was talking about training, by organizations, the academia, something gets turning in my mind. It's actually for everybody. Everybody needs to come in to, make this work.
Absolutely.
So some organizations are very keen on it. They see the value of it. Like the organization I work with, cybersecurity training is compulsory. You probably get it done once a year, starting from the basics, protecting your passwords and on to bigger stuff. Because the organization is international, so they operate on servers where a lot of data goes back and forth. So they're very, very big on security. So something as small as using a USB could be a big problem, in the whole company. So they have been totally banned. That's how bad it is at the moment. But anyway, my organization is very big on that. And there are some other organizations within the African clients that are also big on, security and making sure it is where it should be. So it is something that is important. It is something that we do, and it is something I think every other institution should do as well. If vehicle insurance can be made compulsory, there's no reason why security insurance can't.
I like that angle.
It's as simple as that, really. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Iguan. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Well, on that note, I shall let the Prof have the last say on this. Richard, please, final say. Let's round this off.
Yes, I would like to speak about the African context. I'm aware that as a result of the pandemic, in which a lot of government work had to be done online because of the restrictions and the need to keep people away from each other. Many African governments now have had to put in cybersecurity defenses in their communications, in their procurement systems, because things that used to be done on face-to-face basis where people have meetings on face-to-face, and that couldn't be done because of the pandemic. And they relied more on electronic communications, databases, and telephone and all that. So they suddenly found out that their cyber security systems were not robust enough.
Wow.
And they had to, I'm aware of this in many sub-Saharan African countries. The government systems, they had to scramble to actually get consultants in and give out a lot of contracts to ensure some cybersecurity in government systems. Even before the pandemic, there had been talk of e-government, e-procurement, e-health, which is about electronic health records,
health systems,
health systems, electronic procurement systems for contracting, contract management, records of vendors, suppliers, and all these type of things. But because of the pandemic, that had to be speeded up because the volume of work done or the volume of communications done online through IT systems quadrupled during the pandemic. And they found that, wow, we're not even prepared for this. We're not secure. All our communications are not secure.
Wow.
So a lot of the contracts were given out to hurriedly scramble at least the most important communications.
Yeah, to keep it secure.
To keep it secure. So that's on the African continent. I don't know about the private sector yet, but I know, as the previous speaker said, that it's also happening in his company.
Yeah. Excellent. Anybody wants to chime in on this, on how perhaps their organization is teaching people on the basic level as to cybersecurity? So, anything on this one?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, thanks, Professor, for your point. That was really taken in. What we do as a strategy, and this is just from like my daily work, is to go out there, because there's one thing about adoption. So you go down there now as a consultant and you want to let them adopt maybe a patch management strategy as an example. Hey, hello everyone, this is how you need to secure a system. Until they know what benefits and the risk are at times, these are just end user people. They're not tech nerdy. They just want to put the machine and do what they do on a daily basis. So I think the point on education is actually key. And as a matter of fact, Professor, we've seen a lot of success rate when you explain to the end users and say, wait,
benefits.
Hacked. We're not saying you will be hacked, but there's a lot of vulnerability, which is why I like to go back to TJ all the time. You can be vulnerable, but you don't want to get compromised. So that's the strategy that's worked. Not in the entirety, they're not 100%, but at least we get a lot of adoption. So people adopt that security. There might be a downtime here and there, but at least it's not on a long-term basis. And I think education is actually key. It's letting the end user knows what the benefits are and what the risks are, and enforcing, making sure they have like stakeholder buy-ins, because at times you do things and the stakeholders say, oh yeah, you can go ahead, but when it comes down to the practicality, especially when there's things like maybe organizational culture, this is how we've been doing it for 10 years, this guy's again.
Excellent.
It's just a bit of education.
Thank you very much indeed for that. So important. Very important. Okay. Well, on that note, shall we do a quick final words from the guys? We'll start with Jedi K. Final words from you, please. Let's just round this off because we don't want to hold the Prof for too long. Carry on, please.
All right. It was nice having you on our channel, Prof.
Thank you.
Really insightful. It was a great one. And I wish you all a great week coming ahead. Cheers.
Thank you very much indeed. All the best to you in Riga. Let's swing over to Africa. Final words from you, Igbo1, please.
Yeah, it was good to have a fantastic session again today. And it was also good, to bring a lot of the highlights to Africa. And I do hope going forward, we do see the immense opportunities that avails itself here in this climate. In the West, you've done a whole lot, but Africa, there's still a lot left untouched. Yes. Thanks for having me, guys.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Chibueze, final words from you, please.
Right, Prof, it's been a pleasure having you here, and then thanks everyone for joining us. I hope we get to see Prof sometime again soon.
Oh yes, absolutely we will. And Sol, final word from you, please.
I just want to say thank you again, Prof, for joining. I was excited when I heard that you would be coming on air. It's always good to learn. We always love to learn, and thanks very much for coming.
Excellent. And of course, we'll leave it up to you now with the final word. Prof, please see us out. Final word from you, please.
Thank you, Sol. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Chibueze. Thank you, Toba. It's been wonderful speaking with you. I think just to recap, the key things are cybersecurity is very important because we all depend on cyber systems. We depend on IT systems.
Absolutely.
Also, in making an adoption possible, we need the technologies to be very user-friendly, and we need to help people to change their behavior.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And on that note, we'll say thank you again to Associate Professor Richard Oloruntoba, the Supply Management Lead, Curtin University. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And on that note, guys, we'll say bye-bye and have a good one. Have a great week, guys. Bye.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.